Welcome to Processing Purpose, a business and lifestyle podcast committed to having honest conversations about the stuff in our lives that is often suppressed, ignored, or overlooked. We are two brothers from very different backgrounds, but with one common goal. From entrepreneurship to relationships, from hobbies to house projects, nothing is off limits as we process becoming the best version of ourselves in business and life. Are we back?
Are we back? Wait. Yeah, we're back. We're back. Don't know why I answered a question with a question, but anyway, good to be back,
Dude.
man. It's been a while. It's been a minute. There's been a lot going on, actually. Spring is here.
Busy.
Ski season's finishing. You said you're going to go
Wrapping
back
up.
out.
Yep.
Last
couple days coming up.
Businesses, all sorts of a roller coaster for everybody right now.
Man.
And lots to unpack there, lots to talk about. So where do you want to start?
Yeah. I think what's relevant for me and my family is talking through the conversation of failure.
Okay.
Now, that's kind of the bold headline of it is failure. You could probably define that in a number of ways, but essentially what I mean by that is having an expectation on yourself that you're not meeting.
Right.
That's really, and I don't even mean someone else's expectation for the most part.
Right.
It's self-expectation that we're not meeting. Those
Right.
I think are the most destructive. So I think that's where the conversation for me is relevant at the moment. But before we get there, go ahead.
I was gonna say, break down, like, we've talked about failure on an intellectual level a lot, right? Like, we know what it is, we know how to reframe it, but we haven't really talked about the emotion behind it, the feelings that come with failure, right? Because it's easy to go, hey man, pivot, don't let it weigh you down. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. Like, there's all sorts of euphemisms to throw at you that go, feel better, buddy. But sometimes that's not really super possible. Yeah. And actually, depending on how you're feeling, can make it worse. And so here's a good question. When you know someone close to you is just battling and just going through this and perceiving it this way, how would you help a friend through it?
Great question. Yeah, and you're right. Platitudes don't help.
No. Yeah.
Right? That's just like, it's going to be all right. You'll make it through.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, it's cool.
And they quote scripture, and it came to pass. It didn't come to stay. Right? It's like, okay, yes. And that doesn't necessarily help me in this moment.
No, quoting scripture sometimes helps.
Yeah, absolutely.
But in other times, it feels too much like an easy out almost, right? Like you could tell somebody's like, man, that sucks, and I don't really want to go there with you. So here's a line, here's a quote. But it's like, man, as a friend, what would you hope for, right? What would you hope for, or how would you respond to that? Because ultimately, you don't want to bask in that either. You don't want to just stay in that space with that person, but at the same time, like, be real, be authentic, be genuine, be helpful, Yeah,
I think the if there is a right answer, I think that the answer is going to be varied on how you handle that with friends, right? Because each friend has a different lens for life, and the scope of their failure is going to be through that lens, and some of them are going to be big and some of them are going to be minimal, and so even that's relative to the lenses that we look through, right? So, some are going to want to be engaged. Like, hey, man, let's go grab a drink and let's talk about what's going on in your life, man. What's working? What's not? Where are you hurting? And some will meet you there.
Right.
Meaning emotionally, not just physically. Some will meet you there. And some are just like, no, man, I just need to go and, like, play golf and not talk about this at all for like a week and just need to let it blow over. I probably have my preference, my bend for the way I think it should, in air quotes, be worked through, but you can't make your process somebody else's process. So,
true.
Knowing that person and maybe even just asking the question, it's like, hey, you seem a bit off. Anything going on that you want to talk about, you feel like talking about, that you can unpack, that can help you through?
Yeah.
And see if they go there. And some will, and they might say something and they'll immediately change the subject.
Do you think failure and grief are closely correlated?
I think failure causes grief.
Yeah. So John asked you that question a long time ago when you lost Chris. How's today? And maybe that's a great way to start, right? That's if you notice your friend or anyone's going through anything, whether it be business, life, whatever it might be, maybe just starting with how's today?
Yeah, it's a better question than how are you doing?
Right.
Because that's too global. Most
Right.
people will just be like, "Man, I'm good, man, good."
Yeah.
But if you go, "Hey, how's today going?"
Yeah.
It makes people pause because they're like, "Oh, that's a different frame on that question."
Yeah.
Today. And they
Yeah.
actually have to think about it.
Yeah. And then in a subconscious way, it kind of makes you realize that today's going to pass too.
Yeah.
You know, it kind of makes it finite in a way.
Yeah.
You know, it makes me think about the video I believe you sent me about the guy talking about a winner's life, right? I don't know if you remember that, but he talked about most people, you know, really have a misperception about success that winners just drive nice cars, have, you know, beautiful spouses, beautiful homes, whatever. But the truth is a winner's lifestyle. And man, once he said this, I was like, thank you so much for saying it this way, because now I understand what I'm in.
Oh, this was a Hermosi. I remember this one.
And he said 90% of a winner's life, you feel like your teeth are getting kicked in.
Yep.
8% you're frustrated and confused. 2% of the time you're actually winning, and then you're back into the 90%. Yep. And he goes, the truth is a true winner is built for the fight, not for the win. And so once they win, they're going right back into the fight because that's where you find the satisfaction and meaning.
Yeah, I mean, that if there was a global thesis to put on our conversation, it's that failure is baked into everything that we do.
It's actually a part of the process.
It is as much of the process as research.
Yeah.
As iteration, as, you know, define any part of the process.
Right.
And what we do is we go, failure is the part of the process that we know is a possibility, but we try and avoid.
Right.
And if that's your lens, you are setting yourself up for massive frustration, heartache, disruption, discomfort, you know, whatever negative energy you want to put there, you're setting yourself up for the wrong expectation. And I'm as guilty as anybody on this.
Right.
But if we can frame failure that this is just a normal rhythm of our existence, then instead of it being something to avoid, it's something that we just acknowledge exists, and we go, okay, what can we learn from this? What can we take from this? Instead of taking it so personally.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we do, and we let it totally get us down. Failure and giving up are not synonymous either, right? I don't think. You know, when you fail at something, it's a learning experience. Giving up is just surrendering, which sometimes that's a solution, right? It can be a solution. But just because you've maybe not met your own expectations doesn't necessarily mean you're giving up either, right? Mm-hmm. It's just a redirect or a reframe in a way. Easier said than done most times, but sometimes that's it.
I mean, and Hermosi nailed it. Like 90% is failing. You know,
yeah.
he said it is, you know, getting kicked in the teeth. It is so, and you could call this, you know, that was through the lens of a winner. You could put it through the lens of entrepreneurship. You could put it through the lens of raising kids. You could put it through the lens of learning how to fly fish. Right? Swinging at a baseball. It doesn't matter. Like 90% of the time, it hurts.
Yeah.
It's... And even me using the language "it hurts" is the wrong frame.
Right.
Because it's not about it hurting. Failure shouldn't hurt. It shouldn't cause grief. It shouldn't be discomfort. It should be embraced.
Right.
But that's, including for myself, that's a leap to be like, you know, and not that the right attitude is like, yes, I failed.
Yeah.
Right? That's not necessary. You're not like cheering on the failures necessarily, I guess. I guess you could. But trying to resist it or feeling like, God, I hit it again, or frustration, that's not helpful.
You know, and the truth is, true winning is actually overcoming adversity. adversity, right? It's
Yeah.
not necessarily getting the ribbon, getting the medal, or everyone looking at you going, wow, you're a really impressive, accomplished person. It's not. The true win is proving to yourself that you can fail and get back up and do it again. The strength, I think that uncomfortable feeling that we feel inside is actually strengthening in a way, right? If you go to the gym and start lifting weights right now, you're going to start feeling it, right?
Yeah.
Your muscles are going to start contracting. All those things are going to be like, oh man, this is tough. That's in a way, that's failure,
Yeah.
right? Your body's failing because it's not strong enough to keep up with what you're trying to put it through. That's life. Like we're doing that over and over and over again. So when I think of people like Edison, like historically, he's brilliant, but he's actually one of the most internally strong human beings that's ever existed because he's proved to himself like thousands and thousands of times that he can fail and be okay.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to ask himself, man, can I get through that? He knows he can get through that. Subconsciously, he knows he can get through anything.
Yeah.
That's pretty powerful.
Where does our incorrect framing of failure come from?
This sounds really simple, but I think it comes from our parents' expectations.
Unpack that.
I just think I know for a fact when I disappointed my parents, it was literally the worst thing in the world for me.
Okay.
And I watched or read something somewhere about a year ago that basically said, just be careful the way you talk to your kids, right? Don't expect to yell at them before they go to bed and have them sleep well at night. Don't yell at them before they go to school to get ready for the day and expect them to have a good day at school. And I think in the same way we were raised in a similar environment, not in any fault to our parents. It's just, look, parenting's a real challenge. Any parent that I've ever talked to knows this. I mean, I'm not making anything up. I'm not less of a man because I'm saying that. That's just the truth. And I think we lived in that world. We lived in that space. And I think when you measure your self-worth through others' expectations, you form your own. And you create your own framework of what success looks like and what's good enough for you. And when you don't meet that, especially if you don't meet your parents' standard within that framework. How many times have you met somebody and you're like, oh, how are your kids doing? And they're like, well, they're not doing so good. They've run into some problems or addictions or whatever else. And they got kind of a sadness around them when they talk about their kids. There's still the expectation, right? They created it when you were a kid. They still have it when you're an adult. So I can't even imagine. Thankfully, I feel that I'm living beyond my parents' expectations for what they set for me. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel that way internally, and that feels good. But if I was below that line, I don't know how I'd feel, man. I'd have a hard time. I'd be struggling because I'd always want to fulfill that expectation subconsciously, not even knowing it.
That's an interesting frame because I wonder, and I know that if I asked my parents, I know what the answer would be because they would never say otherwise. But I wonder if I'm living above or below the expectations that my parents have for me.
The look on your face makes me wonder if you're going to do it. You got the look on your face.
If I'm going to ask them?
I might ask them.
No,
your parents are awesome. They'll be
feel like I would get an honest answer.
I think your dad is extremely proud of you.
Yeah.
I could see it in the way he talks about you, the way he is around you. I actually, sorry, Ken, if I'm stepping in front of you here, but I think in some ways, I think he actually looks up to you. I do.
Well, thank you for that. Well, then maybe it's just the expectations I put on myself, which is as equally sometimes not helpful.
Maybe.
I don't. It certainly creates a dissonance.
Yeah.
Right? When you have an expectation of yourself that you haven't proven to be capable of living up to.
Right.
That also creates a pull, right? So there's a positive way to frame that, right? It creates a bit of motivation. It creates a bit of an itch that's got to get scratched. It creates, just kind of the discomfort of like, I gotta crush this.
Yeah.
But it also can be dangerous.
It can also, you could potentially create blind spots too. Meaning if you're unwilling to look at your own failure, right? Sometimes even though it feels crappy, to see it, to feel it, to recognize it, to admit that, hey, that version of myself wasn't good enough, might be a healthier and more helpful stance than ignoring the expectation, ignoring the standard, and going like, it'll just work itself out, and then all of a sudden it's a blind spot now.
Yeah.
And now you can't see those things anymore when they're happening. And I've seen many entrepreneurs, especially on the profit, we talk about that
Sure.
a lot, how many of those guys develop those blind spots, and they can't see that they are the problem, you know?
Yeah.
Can't get out of their own way. So in a way, a true leader, someone who really knows how to push the ball forward, is pretty self-critical.
Here's a question for you. How do you think social media has shaped our perception of failure or success?
I'm going to share a quote. Don't even know who said it, and I apologize for not being able to cite it. But he said, "The problem with the world is that all of the fools and fanatics are so sure of themselves, and everyone who is wise is so full of doubt." And I think social media has exacerbated that whole problem in a really big way.
Yeah.
So much so that all you hear from is fools and fanatics now, and you don't hear the voice of the wise, which is painstaking, because I got to tell you, at 39 years old, all I want is wisdom. I just want to hear from elders who have done it before me, know how to do it. I don't want to recreate anything. I just want to follow who's already done it well, and I can't hear them very well.
Yeah, I mean, me included, we're guilty of posting on social media our wins.
Sure.
So whoever you're following, your friends, the companies, the thought leaders, for the most part, they post their wins.
Yeah.
So we're inundated with wins.
Mm-hmm.
We're inundated with the 2%. The 2% makes up 80% of our visual intake.
Yeah, it's very true. Wow. I didn't really consider that.
When 90% of our living experience is failure.
So people are sitting there watching this like, I'm not winning, everyone else is winning.
I'm a loser. Look, at everybody else is crushing life and I'm failing. Not true.
Not true at all.
And yet, that's the lens that we get fed. I think that is a significant consequence of social media.
It's interesting. Do you think, I'll speak from my own lens. I wonder if I fear someone walking up to me and going, actually, this has happened to me. Let me share something. This has happened to me. Oh my gosh, I totally forgot about this. So when I went into Union Gospel Mission, there was a kid that I went to high school with there. Couldn't believe it. It was so random, right? Because it's up in Seattle. It was 30 minutes from where I grew up. And all of a sudden, I'm not going to say his name, but he was there. And no joke, I remember this. And I wonder if this like underlying fear has just been with me ever since. But he looked at me and he goes, "How the mighty have fallen."
Oh, interesting.
And it killed me. I mean, it just destroyed me inside. Not that I had a lot of pride walking into the mission anyway, but still, just to like feel down and then just get basically kicked in the jaw on the ground. It was like, oh, and then he was there as well. So I'm going, hey man, you're here too. So what the heck?
Yeah.
But nevertheless, dude, I wonder if, ultimately we desire and wish, or I desire and wish possibly that somebody walks up to me and go, "You are just so impressive." Like it's almost like we yearn for that. You could see it in some of our social media behaviors.
Yeah.
Right. We yearn for that feedback.
It's a chemical hit.
Yes, that feedback, that dopamine hit. But I think on the flip side of that, we certainly fear someone walking up to us and saying that.
Yeah.
The mighty have fallen. You have not fulfilled your potential. Wow. That's like a yikes. That's a shot, And it's so funny because we fear it, or I fear it, and it won't happen.
Right.
No one's going to walk up and say that mean of a thing to you.
Really underperforming these days, huh?
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen.
And to your point, the video you sent me is why are we accepting criticism from somebody we would never take advice from?
Right.
That was powerful.
Hello.
That was powerful.
Yeah. Why do you even care about that voice? If you're not going to ask them for their feedback or their wisdom or their help,
yeah,
why do you care about their opinion?
Yeah, that was awesome to hear that today. I thought, yeah, Focus on those who matter in your life.
Yep.
Pour into them. They'll pour into you. Don't worry about the rest.
How do you personally internalize and view failure professionally as you build a company, as you do things that work and do things that don't? Like, how do you emotionally navigate it, you personally? What's your failure lens?
Great question. Failure for me, I would say overarching is pretty in tune and pretty in line with, I accepted a long time ago that failure is just a byproduct of life. We need to get up and keep moving. However, and if I get into the specificity of a failing moment, I don't handle it well. Meaning, like, let me give you an example. My biggest, if I really made a mistake and really upset somebody because of that mistake, it's a 3-day venture for me. I mean, it's not most people are like, all right, pissed them off, let's figure it out. It just eats and eats and eats away at me that how could I have performed so poorly? How could I have missed this thing? Like, this is my freaking job, and I really pride myself on being detailed and being very good at what I do when it comes to service. And man, if I don't execute well, or I miss something, or even if it's an honest mistake, I can't let it go. I can't forgive myself over it, and it just kills me inside. Conflict and confrontation are somewhat similar in how I respond there, but that's not necessarily always correlated with failure either. Sometimes conflict is just conflict. Sometimes you're just dealing with a really upset person. I'm getting better at, I think I've shared it before, I'm really proud of this actually, I'm getting better and better at allowing people to feel their feelings and not trying to save people from their feelings. I am a people pleaser, want everyone to be happy, make everybody happy, put a smile on your face. But I guess the older I'm getting, I think I'm just realizing that feelings come and go.
Yeah.
And it's okay for people to feel their feelings, and they'll get over it. They'll move on, do what you can to be helpful. But even with my kids, like, I don't step in and go, oh my gosh, what's wrong? What can I do to help you? I'm like, yeah, I know, man, this sucks. It does. Not much I can do about that, but I just want to acknowledge it sucks. It's hard. You're going to get through it.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, they will. So not going to try to save my own feelings. Not going to try to save other people's feelings. Let it happen. Let it happen.
I think for me, I'm pretty competitive by nature.
What?
I'm gonna win this podcast.
You already are.
I'm winning. And I think that there's some upside to that, but the downside is that it's probably even, I hate to lose more than I love to win. And I think through that lens, losing and failure are somewhat similar. Okay. And so, if I'm losing, I'm failing. And it's to be avoided because I hate losing. So it's almost to the point where if I know that I don't have a shot at winning, I'm not even going to try. I won't even compete. I won't even go there.
Speaking of shots, I'm going to bring up a story afterward, but how consistent do you feel you are? Professionally, specifically in business, work, professional.
You might have to get a bit
let
more
me
specific.
share the story first, and then I'll give a
Okay.
little bit better frame. So I watched a video. This is kind of how I learn, so I share that I should watch a lot of videos. I don't read much. I never have.
Yeah.
Never been a big reader, but I can absorb a lot from videos. So one of the greatest shooters of all time, you may know his name. I can't remember the guy's name, but he was in a gym giving a lesson to a bunch of kids, high school kids. And he was telling them how he became the greatest shooter in the world. Practiced 500 shots a day. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. In fact, people would come up to him at the court and say, hey, man, you want to play a pickup game? And go, yeah, right after my workout.
Is it Ray Allen?
No, it wasn't. It was an older guy. I can't remember. I'll look that up and share it with you. But 500 shots a day. And like he was just waxing them one after the other as he's giving the lesson. Just one after the other. Boom, boom, in. I mean, total switches, everyone. And so he told everybody, he said, when I'd miss a shot, you can only miss 4 ways. Too far, too much to the right, too much to the left, or too short? And he said, do you think I went back to my drawing board and wrote down that I missed the shot? He goes, no. I wrote down how I missed the shot and how to correct that shot. And I would correct that shot, and I would go back again and keep going. 500 a day, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So he reframed it in a way like greatness without consistency is not a thing.
Yeah.
Like consistency is just rituals, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
It's how you ultimately win over time.
Yeah.
And so I'm asking myself that question. That's why
Sure.
I frame it to you that way. Is like, Gavin, how consistent are you? You know, I'm consistent enough to stay in the game where people are now going, whoa, people have mentioned you guys are blowing up. I'm like, dude, I've been at this for a while, man. We should have struggled through this.
Yeah.
But nobody notices that, right? People are jealous of what you have, not how you got it. Yeah.
Took me 5 years to be an overnight success.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody wants to do the things it took to get there. They just want what you have when you get it.
Totally.
And so anyway, it was just a great reframe of success and what it actually is. It's every day, consistent effort over and over and over again, right? We talked about Roush Motors breaking their motor. Same exact example. Break it over, break it
Yeah,
over.
it's been said that success is moving from failure to failure with great enthusiasm.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And the enthusiasm piece, I guess, is the central point of what I wanted to talk about today around failure is like, how do you keep that enthusiasm?
And this is the end of the podcast because my knowledge has run out. So thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely.
I have no idea. If I'm being truly honest, I don't know. I don't know how to maintain enthusiasm when you're getting kicked in the teeth. Like it is, and it comes back to my disdain for losing, I think, which is where I was kind of going with some of that is like, I think that they're correlated in some way.
Let me ask it this way. If I was Van and I said, Dad, how do I keep my enthusiasm through this? I'm failing. I suck. I hate this. How do I keep my enthusiasm? How am I supposed to stay happy through this? How would you answer that?
I probably would answer it similarly to the way I just answered you. I don't know. And I don't mean that flippantly, but enthusiasm. Well, what is it? Let's first define enthusiasm, right? Because we think of this as rah-rah.
Right. Like
Okay.
you got to be amped up.
Enthusiasm is not that. From a root of the word, entheos means God within. Okay, that's where enthusiasm comes from. It means God within.
I can't believe you just pulled that out of nowhere. How are you not prepared for that? Anyways, he wasn't. That was pretty cool.
And so, yeah, we didn't talk about any of this. And so, God within, in my lens, means that we trust that this is part of the process. So it's not so much that we are excited that we have positive juice when we fail. As much as it is that we have a peace that this is a part of the process, that God's in control, and we're, again, coming back to surrendering the outcome, we're allowing the failure to be a part of the process. It's interesting that you bring up Van because with all my kids, but Van especially, my oldest, he's 11. And this conversation of failure is right now, this moment, if not last night, the night before, it's we talk about it a lot. And I have a gifted 11-year-old that succeeds most of the time, scholastically.
Yeah.
And when he fails, it's catastrophic. Like the world is ending. And it's part of it's, like you said, it's a muscle on some level. And he hasn't had to deal with the discomfort of failing a lot because most of the time he gets it right. And so talking him through these losses, taking the L's, and framing it so that this is to be embraced and to be appreciated and to be reflected on, but not to be, it's not a reflection of your worth, the failing.
Right.
And that, I think, is the crux that I'm trying to get. Van to understand is that failure isn't a reflection on your worth.
Right.
It is part of the process as much as the preparation and the execution and, the research and all of that.
Right.
Like it is what we do. We
So
fail.
Enthusiasm is the willingness to keep trying.
Yeah, it's trusting
Willingness.
that God's at the center of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is what it really means. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, when you're 11, it's one thing to go, okay, Dad, I get that intellectually. When you're 11, when you're 43, it's another thing to go, no, I feel that, right? It doesn't hurt me when I fail. And I'm not sure I'm even there yet. Like,
Yeah.
It's uncomfortable when you strike out at the plate.
Right.
For me, I mean, maybe I'll get to a point where it's like, hey, struck out, no big deal. I'll get him next time. I'm not there yet. And so it's hard to expect that my 11-year-old will be.
And just because you envision something doesn't necessarily mean, professional athletes envision the game, right? They see the game, they see the pitcher throwing the ball, they hit the home run, they still strike out. You know what I mean? Just because you set the vision doesn't necessarily mean that's always going to be how it works out. You have to surrender the outcome. And man, and back to my point from before, it's really challenging as a parent because you want your kids to be championed. You want your kids to always feel great about who they are and their worth and existence in the world. But there's a lot of strength that happens internally too when they resolve their own conflict. That conflict of like, I'm not good enough. Like there has to be something internally that other voice kind of lifts itself up and go, I am good enough.
Yeah.
And I will beat you down,
Mm-hmm. And I think that we can be that voice,
yeah.
Right? As parents, like I think that's part of our role is to speak life into our kids, that they are good enough, that it's okay, that they're not being judged by their failures, whether that's a grade, whether that's a project, whether that's scoring goals on the weekend, right? I think that there's layers to that, but
right.
That their effort is what I'm after. Like my youngest loves soccer, and he is a goal scoring fiend.
Yeah.
Like to the point where, he's like, I am the best on the team. It's like, okay, that's easy. But
save some goals for the rest of us, bud.
That's right. But I think the thing that I try and lean into more than the result is the effort. Okay, if we can lean into the effort, because that's what we truly control. We don't always control the result.
Right.
We don't control the outcome, which is what I mean when I say surrender the outcome. That is an element that we are not in control of. We are in control of the effort that we put into the process. And that is the story of taking 500 three-pointers every single day. You're not in control of whether or not that basketball goes in, but you can take 500 shots. And if you do it consistently enough, it will go in.
Right.
Consistently.
Yeah.
We are in control of the effort. So one of the things that I try and really push on my kids, even when they're winning, is not praising the fact that, my son scored 5 goals on Saturday. It's like, great game, dude. You gave your all out there. You worked hard. You hustled. You were encouraging to your teammates. I'm proud of you. And not even mentioning the goals.
Yeah. Good job. That's really cool. Yeah, that's a great way to frame it as a parent. I appreciate that a lot. Because I asked Liv when she walked in, did you score a goal? Why does that matter? I didn't even think about it.
Did you give your best?
Yeah. Why wouldn't I ask it that way? I didn't even think about it that way.
I love what coming back to we mentioned Jesse Isler a lot on this podcast.
Yeah,
but one of the things that he does with his kids is they have a hand gesture when they're competing, and at the end of the competition, the hand gesture is a 0, meaning I gave it all, and I have nothing left in the tank.
Ah, that's cool.
0. I left it all on the field. It has nothing to do with whether or not they won, whether or not they lost. None of it. I gave 100. Dude. And that is the only measurement that they focus on.
They're going to be monsters as adults. They are.
I mean, when you remove the failure as something to be avoided, look, I know some super successful people in my life, and I know you do too. And without exception, they are the ones that have failed the most.
Exactly. They'll all admit that too. And if you tell them they're super successful, they'll laugh and go, man, there's people that are way more successful than me. That's usually the answer.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I'll talk with my friends and go, what do you feel has been the key to your success? And they'll say, I have failed more than everybody else. And I fail faster than everybody else.
And more times than not, there's only a handful of people that can take those hits over and over and over again. You know, so if you're the one standing at the end of the line, like you are arguably one of the strongest human beings left standing.
Well, there's a resiliency factor to it for
Yeah.
sure. But even the language of taking those hits, I want to reframe failure entirely.
Sure.
So that it's not hits means it's negative. You got hit in the face today. Like, why do we frame it that way?
I think
and that's not a pointing the finger at you in any way. I do it too. But why can't we just be like, yep.
It's detaching the emotion of failure.
Yes.
That's what we have to do. That we call it hits because we attach emotion to it. We know it didn't feel good.
Yeah.
But if we can detach the emotion somehow, I think that's the key.
How? How do you detach emotion from something that feels so, again, it's the lens, it feels so personal when it shouldn't feel personal?
I think, well, one, you said it yourself because of your own expectations, but I think more than anything, whether we want to admit it or not, we don't want to be perceived that way. We don't want people or friends or anybody to perceive us as a failure or perceive us as somebody that can't make it or can't hack it.
Yeah.
And it's like we try to preserve that as much as humanly possible. So we do the Facebook stuff. We show up with a smile on our face. How are things going? Things are going great. Kids are doing well, blah, blah, blah. But internally we're going, I'm suffocating in here. I don't know what to say. I hope they don't know the truth. But it's like, no one, like, I don't know. We all create this weird expectation around the perception of others, but no one behaves that way.
Yeah.
No one really sees it that way. And even if they do cast that judgment on you, then that probably isn't a true relationship or a true friend anyway, right? I love the quote, thinking is hard. That's why most people judge, you know?
Right.
So, you know, you're probably not around a thinker if you're really feeling that kind of judgment from them anyway. But then back to your own internal expectations, right?
Yeah.
Detaching that negative emotion from like, why? And you have to have a expectation for the outcome to some degree. You have to set some kind of expectation or standard for how you're doing things, why you're doing things the way you're doing things. But it's got to be something with your self-worth. Your worth and your feelings around failure. There's something there. We're not going to claim we've ever solved a major problem like this, but it's something to continue looking at and working on.
It really is. The expectations we set on, and it, I'll point the finger at myself. Like, it's the expectations I set for myself often are unrealistic. And I get called out by my mastermind with that. It's like, I didn't get much done. This is what I thought I could get done. This is what I thought it would turn into. This is how fast I thought it would succeed. And often they'll go, well, why did you think that?
And what's your response to that when they ask that question?
I thought that's what I was capable of. Like, I thought that's what it was. I thought that's how it would go. I thought that, I'm sure on some level it's tainted by what we see, right? Because we get the 60-second reel version, meaning
right.
Instagram reel version of the 2.5-year process.
Right.
Right. And so we think it's a 60-second execution.
Because you're a high efficiency person, do you always assume maximum efficiency in your vision?
Yeah.
So you always assume it's going to go exactly the way it's supposed to go because I've set these systems up, or not necessarily that, but these systems are set in place. There should be high efficiency here. But of course we run into problems. We run into hiccups and things like that.
Speaking of judgment, I think that I should be able to execute faster than somebody else. I think that's maybe what it comes down to. Not that I expect it to go perfectly at all. And not that I think that it's going to go without flaw and without failure and attached to it. But I think that I put this lens on it of like, well, I think somebody else could do it this fast, so I should be able to do it that fast. And that's not necessarily true because you don't know how fast it was actually done before.
But when you're in full execution mode, you're in flow. Like executing is your thing.
Yeah.
So you get juice from it. You get juice from
when I'm trying to solve the equation.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Goodwill Hunting.
Yeah.
Be cool to be that smart. Interesting. So after talking this through and after thinking about maybe a couple reframes, how would you define failure now? Not necessarily saying we fixed anything or we're trying to redefine something. But you feel it just processing it through and talking it through is helpful?
Yeah, I mean, I think that me reframing the way I look at failure is going to be the lever that gets pulled to take me to the next level. I do. And I think that the way I have viewed failure has been unhealthy, and I'm still in process of that. So it's not even so much that this conversation, at least so far, has been like, oh, yes, and this is what's going to change, as much as it is just me continuing to process it.
Right.
Like, here's the way I viewed it. Here's the way I view it. Here's how I want to view it.
Right.
And I know that I'm not there yet.
Sure. Great awareness, though, to be looking at it at all.
Yeah. And you know, I think that's also probably why my kids have a bit of a failure complex, if you will, is because Holly and I are super competitive and we hate to lose. And we hate to lose more than we love to win. And when that's the frame, then you're always trying to avoid the loss.
Right.
And that's not realistic. And I think just continuing to accept that failure is not to be avoided, I think, is where I have to continue to meditate.
Are you having conversations with him about what's currently going on in your life? Like, this is what I'm up against. This is what I'm dealing with. You're not alone. Adults go through this. So you're in a real awesome setting for real life circumstances, teaching the lesson, not just saying, hey buddy, pick your head up. And it's all this like, no, I'm actually, we're doing this together, buddy.
Yeah.
We're going through this right now together.
Yeah. I lost a $50,000 client this week.
Yeah.
And it was partially on me, which as the boss means that it was all on me. And yes, my team could have done better. Yes, but that's still on me to set the expectation of what should have been done.
Right.
And what didn't get done.
Right.
And part of that was we needed a process change, and we dropped the ball. I mean, that's the short version, is that we didn't have to lose this client.
Right.
And we did, because we didn't fulfill an expectation. And so one of the coming back to my mastermind and sharing those failures, one of the things that I love about what my mastermind has done is that we have a Slack channel. So I don't know if people use Slack or if you use Slack, but it's a great way to do corporate communication.
It's awesome. It's a really cool tool.
And so we have a Slack channel set up for the mastermind. So there's just the 5 of us in there. But one of the channels that we've set up in there, one of the threads, is called Dumbass. That's the name of one of the threads. And it is where we post our failures. Because
that is super healthy.
We want to be able to make failure normal.
Yeah.
And when you can normalize it, you remove the emotion of it.
It's really interesting when someone is willing and vulnerable to share their failures with me. I'm really proud. Like, there's this sense of like, not proud of myself at all. It's not like, oh, I'm proud of them and what they've gone through, and kind of like, I have this sense of champion feelings around it all. Like, to the definition I've shared a few times, acceptance is giving up all hope of having a better past. So when you see someone go through that process, I think you have this huge aha with them of like, now you're going to go. Mm-hmm. Now you're going to run, right? Mm-hmm. But I think that pivotal moment for most people, I think, is really important.
The most compelling social follows for me are those that I get to watch the process. Right? When I'm watching somebody build a new company, make an acquisition, whatever it is, like, don't give me show me all of it.
Yeah.
Show me the L's. Show me how this collapsed.
Right.
Show me how you went bankrupt. Okay? Because that needs to be normalized.
Right.
Not bankruptcy, but the failure of whatever it is, right? It needs to be normalized. And so when the mastermind posts in there, did this advertising thing, whatever, it cost me $200,000 and returned zero. It's like,
that's a loss.
Okay.
It's an L.
So yeah, that happened. And that's not that uncommon. Like, it's a part of it.
Yeah.
And we need to normalize failure. That, I think, needs to be the theme here. We need to normalize it.
I remember you talked to your friend about getting sued.
Yeah.
And obviously nothing transpired, but the comment from him of, welcome to the game.
Yeah.
That's a part of the process. Like, it's just how it goes.
The bigger game you play, the bigger target you have. And he goes, if you're going to play football, don't bitch about the hits. And it's like, okay.
Yeah. Get bigger pads, I guess. Get a better helmet. I mean, it is what it is.
It's part of the game.
Right? Get better attorneys. That's your helmet.
Right.
But it's interesting that we all try to avoid it as much as possible. We don't want to face it. We don't want to deal with it. We don't want to be perceived as it. Yeah. But it's so ingrained into the human condition, right? It's who we are. In fact, we share the same faith, and it's how our story started.
Yeah.
Was failing, and needing a savior because of it. And so, it's more of who we are in terms of self-worth. I failed. Now am I worthy? Well, it's an irrelevant question because it's ultimately actually part of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Right? How can you compare whether or not you're worthy about your actual DNA? That doesn't make a lot of sense. And so important for contrast, right? If you don't fail, you don't know what a win looks like.
Yeah.
Right? You don't know what it feels like.
You don't know what light is without the darkness.
Right.
And it's part of it.
That's right. Yeah. A very relevant conversation around failure. Anything else you want to?
No, I mean, I think, to understand that failure or discomfort will be 90% of the entrepreneurial journey, I think, is center.
Right.
Because that means it's normal.
Right.
That means it's going to happen. It's going to happen a lot. It's going to happen way more than you succeed. So just settle into it and allow it to happen instead of letting it dictate your self-worth.
Right.
It does not reflect on your self-worth.
Doesn't. Is it good work, and does the world need it?
Yeah.
Those are I would say rest on those two questions, at least for now. If you're in a space of just hardship and adversity, ask those two questions. Is this good work? Does the world need it? And if so, let that drive the 2%. Just let it keep driving you. Without that why, without that big purpose, I think it's going to be hard to deal with the 90%. In fact, most people can't, and they'll find their way. So if you're finding yourself asking a lot of what am I doing this for questions, make sure you can clearly answer those two. If not, maybe it's time for a pivot. Maybe it's time to have that conversation. And we have an episode on that.
That's right. We do. Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm sorry you're going through some of this stuff. It's
normal.
It's normal. Yeah. Why am I saying sorry? It's part of life. But I am grateful that you're able to walk through it at the same time your son's going through this, because I think the lessons and the benefits from that are going to be astronomical. Yeah.
They're watching us, and you can only talk them through so much. Mm-hmm. Part of it's them just having to watch how you deal with it.
Correct.
Right. And if I'm struggling with it, they're going to struggle with it.
Right.
So I have to solve it for me.
Mm-hmm. And
in turn, it will help them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great way to wrap it up. Love it.
Thanks, bud.
Thank you. We're out.
See you
next time. Thank you for tuning in to Processing Purpose. We hope you grabbed a few gold nuggets to take one step forward in your journey of life and business. Please remember to like and subscribe our channel if you'd like to get more content to help you build and grow everything around you. Make today your best day. Today is day one.